We kick off with the captain's log about the crew ready for some much-deserved shore leave.
And I, too, am looking forward to a nice period of rest on some lovely
Yeoman?
planet.
Better not put the real thing in the logs. There's a garbled message about the Intrepid, a Vulcan ship. I sent someone shoving some contrived relative into my backstory. Spock says the Vulcans on the Intrepid have all died, but Kirk and Bones thinks he just needs a checkup, and take the protesting Vulcan down to sickbay. Before he can even leave, though, word comes in that the Enterprise needs to hold off on shore leave for a rescue mission. Contact with the star system and the Intrepid have been lost.
I have just completed a full long-range scan of Gamma 7A system. It is dead.
Dead?
Well, I guess there's no one to rescue then. Let's head home. After the titles, McCoy questions Spock's assertions that 400 Vulcans dying all at once can be felt by him.
You speak about the objective hardness of the Vulcan heart. Yet how little room there seems to be in yours.
Drops the mic. By the time he reaches the bridge, the Enterprise has arrived, and there's a huge black emptiness in front of them, like facing a tax bill. They try to speculate on what this is, but the fact that no light passes through it from the other side precludes any of the usual suspects, so they decide to probe it. Hard to go wrong with that. This goes badly, though. Not only do they get no information, but there's this awful feedback coming back that just starts messing with the abilities of some of them to even stay upright. Not just dizziness, but an overall fatigue, even fainting. It's like suddenly being drunk without any of the fun. Kirk comes over to Spock so he can complain about him not knowing what's going on, but with that constructive step out of the way, suggests that Spock should start explaining what it isn't, to at least narrow down what it might be. I mean, besides the obvious, saying, it's not a shoe, it's not a horse, it's not Bulgaria, it's not the joy of a child on Christmas morning, that probably wouldn't help. The fact that it triggered the deflectors, though, suggests some form of energy, so, that's something. Kirk decides the only choice is to get in there and probe it again. But as they do, they hear the same horrible sound, and Uhura assures them this isn't coming through the comm system, so she can't just turn it down like she does when Scotty starts playing his bagpipes on Thursdays. Once they enter it, all stars vanish from view faster than a Hollywood studio scandal. Kirk is irritable, mad that the stars are gone and Spock can't explain it, mad that people are on the verge of passing out at their stations, mad because they lost power and Scotty doesn't know why. I can't help but think that he was really counting on that shore leave. He's supposed to be drinking Mai Tais with some green alien by the pool, damn it. Now he's out here trying to probe Satan's asshole. Bones arrives to give everyone stimulants, but he has no more answers than anyone else.
Spock, analysis of that last burst of noise before we started losing power.
That sound was the turbulence caused by the penetration of a boundary layer, Captain.
What boundary layer?
Unknown.
The boundary layer between what and what?
Between where we were and where we are.
The day Spock decided to start trolling. Nobody has any ideas, save for Bones, who thinks they should get the hell out of here. Instead, Kirk digs deep and gives the entire ship a pep talk. Their mission isn't to do the safe thing, but this good ship with this good crew can pull this off. Sounds better when Kirk says it, obviously. I'm sure there's an academy course in how to give bad news to the crew and make it sound good.
Jim, according to the life indicators, the energy levels,
Yes, say it, Bones.
according to the life monitors, we're dying. We're all dying.
Well, that might be too hard to spin into good news with a speech. Let's just keep that one to ourselves. When Kirk goes to check out the engines, Scotty gives a reverse blast of them, which is disconcerting because the ship lurched forward as a result. And Spock calls up to say, yeah, we're now heading deeper into this thing. So Spock suggests heading forward, and Kirk finally decides to do that. And it does manage to start slowing down their forward progress by trying to go forward. Apparently that barrier has separated them from Wonderland. They're going to need to act fast because the life signs are continuing to weaken of every member of the crew. And Scotty says everything's running backwards. I mean, best not to take that too literally or else their fuel reserves would be going up, and that's not what's happening. Spock says there's something in this field that's draining in all the energy from the ship and its crew. Probably what wiped out that star system and the Intrepid. So we're going to go back to Bones' plan, get the duck out of Fodge. But after the crew leaves, Spock says in private that the Intrepid would have tried what they're going to try. But Kirk points out that, by Spock's own admission, things are not behaving logically, so it's possible the Vulcans didn't try to think the way they're thinking. Spock concedes that, plus the fact that Vulcan hasn't been conquered by outsiders ever, so they wouldn't have had the mindset of it until it was too late. So, that's point 1 for regular ass-kicking. Anyway, the plan is to get out of here with a massive forward thrust. But people might be having second thoughts on that plan. And this has got to be a novel experience for Kirk. A massive forward thrust has served him well on many occasions. So, the plan didn't work, but at least we have discovered what's causing all of this. Okay, on the list of suspects, I have to imagine an amoeba had to be pretty close to the bottom. Few times do you whip around the chair of the master villain and see a single-celled organism sitting there stroking a cat. I see you have found me at last, Mr. Bond. They hit it with a probe and find out the thing is a 11,000-mile-long single-celled organism. The big three head into a lab to look things over, and Bones finally says the only thing they can do now is take a closer look at it, in a shuttlecraft. Kirk hates this idea. Stick it with probes, he says. But Spock agrees with McCoy that this situation calls for a thinking mind, not a probe. Kirk still hates the idea, but Spock and McCoy are not only convinced it needs to be done, they argue over which one of them should get the chance to do it. Kirk gives a log entry about it, where he weighs the risk to both of his friends in this crazy mission. Bones has the better knowledge base, but Spock has the physical and emotional disposition to better handle the situation. After thinking it over, he gives Spock the bad news. You've won the prize. You get to ride that shuttle in like Slim Pickens. You know, immunity syndrome really serves as a fine example of what made the original series work. We have a frankly ridiculous thing here. An amoeba bigger than the planet Earth surviving out in space. This should be on par with Spock's brain as far as absurd premises go. And yet despite that, the build-up to the revelation with mystery and the scale of the threat is such that this revelation does not yield laughter. Instead, puzzlement. The audience is willing to give the episode a chance. What's also helped is that the relationship between Spock and McCoy is given a rather prominent placement here. And while Spock keeps getting the last word, nevertheless we can often see McCoy's viewpoint. His frustration, for instance, as he tries to brief Spock about the equipment to use, feeling it as a spiteful refusal to allow McCoy to play any part in this thing that the Doctor is fascinated to study. The space amoeba is absurd, but the episode allows us to set aside that absurdity by making it ancillary. It's the effect that it has on the story, more than the thing itself, that really matters. So Spock flies in, diverting power to shields, knowing he's likely not going to make it back without that power for the engines, but he's determined to see this through. He flies his shuttlecraft through the outer layer of the amoeba, and despite a massive tantrum, they are all still alive.
Oh, and Dr. McCoy. You would not have survived it.
We may not make it out alive, and I wanted to say I told you so. Spock's close enough to the nucleus to get a good look at it, and that confirms the worst. The space amoeba is ready to divide, meaning that there will be 2 of those damn things floating around the galaxy. I'm not sure there's enough hand sanitizer out there to deal with that. So we're going to find some other way to kill this thing. But they've only got an hour of power left, and Spock's message garbles over the part where he tells them how to destroy it.
Tell Dr. McCoy. You should have wished me lucky.
Stop looking at me like this is my fault, Jim. While they think about it, Kirk and Bones reflect that, in a way, they're like antibodies protecting the galaxy from an invading germ, which gives Kirk an idea.
Antibodies.
Jim, the last time you talked to me this way, you wanted me to be your wingman on Andoria. Kirk decides to redirect all power from engines to shields and slam themselves into that damn bug. This works, in the sense that they have now smashed inside of the thing, but Scotty wants to know what the plan is now. Blasting it with phasers is pointless if it eats power, and it's not like they can go kick it in the jimmies or something. But Kirk figures if everything with this creature is working backwards, let's use some antimatter on it and see how it likes that. As for Spock, he's near death and makes a log entry to ensure that his final record is that everyone on the ship from the captain on down are the absolute greatest. Meanwhile, a couple of ensigns are probably going through his quarters. Ooh, claimed, that's mine! Kirk similarly makes a log entry, should the Enterprise fail, in order to recommend special commendations for Spock, Bones, Scotty, Uhura, Chekhov, and what's-his-name who's keeping Sulu's seat warm. So they launch a probe with a 7-minute timer into the nucleus at point-blank range, but on their way out they spot the shuttlecraft and nab it with a pair of tractor beams, despite Spock's objections about risking the ship trying to save him. Well, the mother of all shaky cams happens, but they've succeeded. There's no sign of the amoeba, and the stars are back, and Spock is able to fly the shuttle back in, meaning...
I'm still looking forward to a nice period of rest and relaxation on some lovely planet.
Post-episode follow-up. Annoying character goes to Admiral Cockblock for ruining a perfectly good shore leave. We have a Like Unto an Amoeba award for our heroes being the size of an amoeba next to an actual amoeba. All scores are relative to their series. Final score is 7 out of 10. This is an amazingly strong outing, thanks in no small part to its heavy emphasis on the personalities of our characters in a crisis, particularly Spock. It's not the peril, it's how they deal with the peril. That's where the strength lies in this episode, and shows why its characters are the heart of what people love about Star Trek. They take a goofy premise and make it believable, an absurd adversary and make it menacing, a silly plot and made us love our heroes even more. The greatest strength of Star Trek will always be its heart.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord! All systems functioning properly.
Then kindly tell me what happened to the stars.